Hello, Guardians. It is Ebontis here. We are back to talk about another This Week at Bungie. Today it is October 22nd. And just a reminder for you guys, if you are a good follower of the channel and you guys have seen the Last Word podcast, the next episode is going to be tomorrow night. Will be Friday, October 23rd. We've got Wilhelm Scream, an awesome Destiny creator, good YouTube guy, just a good friend of the show. And we've also got Teasing Teddy, just a very smart guy, does some cool freelance work. One of those guys out there who has like every Grimoire score possible in Destiny 2, so lots of knowledge in the game, really cool perspective. We've got story stuff to talk about, and what I'm about to talk about. So tune in tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, twitch.tv/Ebontis. We will be talking about that. But today we got a TWAB, and we all knew it was going to be about the Sandbox, so that is the big stuff that I do want to talk about. Now, if you haven't seen this new story trailer that came out, I did a full breakdown on it, paused it when I thought about it. I'm pretty excited to see how they build up Aramis as a villain overall. I think it's got potential. We're just going to have to see how it plays out. My one big ask, like crossing fingers ask, is that Aramis is not who we fight at the end of the campaign. If we go through like 6 or 7 story missions and we beat this villain that's been like hyped up as much as it has been, I guess I'm going to be a little disappointed that's all we're going to get out of her. I don't know how it's going to tie into the raid or how the story is going to go. I'm just hoping Aramis is a worthwhile villain. Outside of that, lots of things look very cool. Pretty excited for it. You can see my whole video about all of that stuff. Very, very cool stuff. The biggest changes we've got are, of course, the Sandbox. Now, the Sandbox is basically how all of your weapons and abilities feel in the game. This is all about weapon Sandbox, especially, not abilities, supers, anything of that nature. This is weapons, period. Now, the changes that we're looking at are as follows. I'm going to try and zoom in so you guys can see all this stuff. Hopefully, I'm not too much in the way. There. So basically, they say we're going to be covering some changes to a few specific weapons and weapon families, and they just wanted to clarify how they talk about them. Weapons have like families, and they can be either based on like hand cannons and their rate of fire or their name. So like an aggressive hand cannon is also a 110 hand cannon. They're the same thing. So they were just clarifying that at the top. So they're making changes to hand cannons to give their families a little more diversity and a little more reason to use them. Aggressive hand cannons, rate of fire increased from 110 to 120. These are the slowest hard-hitting hand cannons. They broke out aggressive hand cannons, allowing custom tuning of stats. They also say the damage fall off for 100 range. So if you have your range maxed out on a now 20 hand cannon, the range drop off for damage starts at 32 meters. It was lower for basically all of these hand cannons, so now this aggressive hand cannon will have a much more usability at longer range. Basically, they hit hard, they're going to carry farther, and they're going to do full damage farther out. And also, they are changing the rate of fire, so they're going from 110 RPM rounds per minute to 120. So these things that hit like trucks potentially are going to be still hitting like trucks, but they're going to fire faster and have farther range. Potentially cool. Like 110s needed some love. They've been most likely more of the time not worthwhile because it's still, the way you get headshots and body shots and stuff like that. So maybe if you've got next to max range on this thing and you can really enjoy some damage, you might be able to outshoot some of these other hand cannons from farther away. If you might not get, your 3 shots may kill them. If they're too far, their 3 shots may not kill you. Second one is adaptive and precision. This is kind of the big talking point, it seems. Adaptive, precision. Actually, sorry, I have this wrong. The lightweight and adaptive. So here's the thing. So the range stat now has more impact. So this is adaptive and precision because lightweight is no longer a thing, which we'll get there in a second. That's why, sorry. Range stat has more impact on minimum damage fall off for both archetypes. Damage fall off for 100 range now starts at 25. So hand cannons are going to have a longer range than they did before. And precision hand cannon specifically, the magazine is scaled up by 37%. This also affects exotics with that rate of fire. So anything that's a 180 rate of fire hand cannon is going to be having a bigger magazine. So picture a 180 something. I want to say like Malfeasance is one, if I remember correctly. Still exotics as well. You're going to have more rounds in the magazine, which is a good thing. They fire faster, don't do quite as much damage. Less frequency of reloads is a good thing. Now, this is where everybody seems to explode on Twitter. We'll see. Lightweight, which are now folded into adaptive. Lightweights were 150s, adaptives were 140s. Most people generally thought 150s were better because you can fire faster. You had the same, headshot and body shot number of shots required to kill somebody. Now 150s are all lumped into 140s. Now, one thing that was clarified, I'm not as much of a PvP expert, but been reading on Twitter trying to gather everybody's thoughts. Lightweights also had intrinsic perks like slightly faster movement, slightly faster like handling, so like readiness speed and stuff like that. Those aspects are gone as well. Those are loaded, those are literally folded into adaptive, and they just function as adaptives, all of them now. So all lightweight hand cannons are now adaptive. All 150s are now 140s and act accordingly. This includes Luna's Howl and Not Forgotten, so they're all 140s. And one exotic hand cannon will main as 150. It's Sunshot. See, only one. So they state, at this time, lightweight 150 hand cannons represent the majority of hand cannon use in Crucible. Well, yeah, it's better than a 140. Still gets, 3 headshot kills. It was basically kind of the best of all worlds because it fired faster and all that fun stuff. Said, while we experimented with many different ways to differentiate the 150s and the 140s, basically they found that they couldn't really make a distinct difference, and they're close together, so I can see that. And they say this change kind of goes in line with the changes to auto rifles that they're making as well. So that's kind of a thing that they needed to do. They said they selected the 140s as a fair balance, and I guess that's just where they settled. It's kind of unfortunate that people who like the lightweight for the faster movement speed and the handling don't have that as an option anymore, because some people definitely probably took advantage of that playstyle. But sadly, that is now gone. Those are just all, there's 120s, 140s, and 180s. And that's it. Those are your hand cannons, period. So we'll see how that one plays out. So if you have anything in your game where it shows rounds per minute of 150, just know that that's going to be a 140. If you have anything that says 110, it's going to be 120. I will be curious where everything falls. Next, we've got sniper rifles. They want sniper rifles to feel powerful. I still question a little bit of this because they buff them by 20%, nerf them back down, and nobody uses them again. Without being so easy to use that they dominate. Now, this feels very much more related to a PvP and Crucible discussion, not so much PvE damage related, because that would be a different discussion. You'd see different numbers. This is all just about scopes and aim assist. They adjusted how aim assist is affected by sniper rifle zoom level. Lower zoom scopes, which basically a lot of people like lower zoom scopes because they can still get a wider field of view of the arena and everything in front of them. They're not so dialed in on one spot that they can't see anything else. So the lowest zoom scopes have a large reduction in aim assist. Basically means as people do drag scopes with those low zoom scopes, they're going to have less aim assist and those shots are less likely to connect because the aim assist isn't going to be there. The stickiness on the heads and that type of stuff of sniper rifles on low zooms are going away. But on the flip side, high zoom scopes will have a small increase. So if you're willing to go with a higher zoom scope and you're a little more dialed in on a certain area, if you do go for that shot, you're likely to get a little more boost to your aim assist than you did before. I don't snipe as much. I'm a questionably okay sniper at best. There are people who would mop the floor with me in most sniping in any category. So I don't know if this is going to phase me too much. I'm not one of those slide snipers, no scoping, anything like that. That is a skill set I've just apparently never acquired. So for me, if I take a slightly higher zoom scope and I've got a little more balanced aim assist out of it, but those people who are doing sliding no scopes and they can't quite nail those as much, I guess I'm okay with that as the way I feel snipers would play. I know plenty of people probably will not be thrilled about this because they have certain scopes and zooms and things like that. Some snipers have intrinsic zoom levels, period. So some of that's not going to be changeable. I don't know how many actually have adjustable zooms, but either way, that's kind of how snipers are going to change. No change to damage in PvE, no adjustments there. So whatever you're doing in sniper damage in PvE is what you're getting. Auto rifles. We all pretty much knew this one was coming. In Season of the Worthy, that was last season, the adaptive archetype, that's 600 rate of fire, which is going to be your gnawing hunger, which everybody uses. They were given a buff. We're pulling that back a little bit to keep in check with other auto rifle archetypes. Adaptives are having their per bullet damage reduced from 15.75 to 14.25. Prior to the buff, it was 13.75. So it got a bump of 2 damage per bullet, and now it's being brought down 1.5 damage per bullet. So it's slightly better than it used to be 2 seasons ago, but not much. They say this is going to bring it in line with the other auto rifles like 450s and other things. Again, we'll just have to see, but your gnawing hungers probably not going to be just monstrous anymore. More in line. This is one I'm sad about. Scout rifles. Scout rifles have a reasonable time to kill and can't be adjusted too much without making them dominate the battlefield. So we're making them a little easier to use. Now, the reason I'm bummed is mostly for a PvE reason, which we'll get to in a second. In PvP, even Fallout has said that, like, you know, if you buff scout rifles too much, they have a lot of range and you can probably 3 or 4 tap people from very far away. And if they're even more dominant, then people are going to be sitting on either side of the map just picking people off. I get that that's a thing, but I'll get to my point in a second. So they increased how much each point of the aim assist stat widens the aim assist cone. Like, if you're going by my head, how much wider is the chance that it's going to be sticky on my head for a little bit longer? At maximum, the AA cone, aim assist cone, is 15% wider. So you're going to be, basically, scout rifles with aim assist are going to be nicer for the shots. They're going to be a little more forgiving, but they're not changing damage levels at all. Now, for a PvP sake, I am honestly totally fine with that, because generally scout rifles, they could be potentially lethal. If they bumped up the damage to be like, 2 or 3 shots from like crazy far away and the aim assist is really high, you probably would have a problem that a lot of us wouldn't expect. My issue with scout rifles, I would love to see a bump in PvE damage. There's not really ever a time to me that a scout rifle feels powerful in PvE in which something like a pulse rifle can't keep up with it at the range that I ever need for basically any encounter, and also the damage that I can output, the reserves that I have, the magazine size. Typically, pulse rifles feel better for PvE for just about everything, and even auto rifles lately have felt pretty solid. There's not really a reason to use a scout rifle in PvE, and that's where I wish they would have seen a buff. That's me, personally. I'm usually not going to bring out a scout rifle for basically any reason in PvE, and I don't know of a lot of people that will either. So maybe we'll see if there's any changes coming, but honestly, for me, that's what I was looking for. This is basically mostly for Crucible. That's it. Rocket launchers next. Now, let's just see this. These heavy weapons currently have very low reserves. You don't say. They cap out at like 6, basically. Maybe 7 if you throw double reserve perks on armor or something like that. So we're adjusting that. We expect to take another look at rocket launchers in a future season. So we're stuck with this for Season 12. Increase the reserves by 1 or 2 rockets, depending on the inventory stat. So if you had 6 in it before, it might have 7 or 8 as a total capacity. The biggest reason why rocket launchers are not seeing a whole lot of use is not the fact that I need 1 or 2 more backup weapons to use. I mean, it's nice, because grenade launchers, I have like 18, so if I want to bust out my grenade launcher, kill a couple enemies in PvE, I'm not like completely using all my ammo, which is usually the reason rocket launchers don't get as much use. Because if I shoot 1 rocket and it's like 1/6 of my ammo on like a few dudes and I want to use it, I'm like, maybe I need that later. So you have a little bit more. The biggest issue with rocket launchers is you have 1 in your magazine, you fire it out, you have to wait for it to travel, explode, big slow reload time. By the time you get it all reloaded in, most every other heavy weapon has output a crap ton more damage. So the fact that there's only 1 rocket launcher, truth, that has 3 in the magazine, everything else is 1, they're just slow at DPS. I mean, yeah, you could peek and fire, and depending if, new mechanics or new, raid or strike mechanics ask you to do that, we'll see. But generally still, like, if I could go 1, 2, and pump out 2 rockets, they would at least make them a little bit more of a viable option. I don't know if that would break the game for DPS. I would like to see it do it. And we'll kind of get to overall thoughts in the end. But yeah, having more reserves is not a bad thing. Gives you a little more flexibility so you don't feel like you're just going to burn through a huge chunk of your ammo, like 1/6 of your ammo with 1 rocket. So a little bit more. But me, still would also like to see most rockets have like 2 in the chamber or 2 in the magazine, just to give you a little more flexibility of use. They also have some surgical changes for select weapons. Some of these you guys probably knew were coming. Some I didn't expect at all. So let's see. Perks. Outlaw. The reload speed increase felt insufficient with certain subfamilies and combination of roles, i.e. aggressive hand cannons, for example. So they increased the reload stat bonus for Outlaw from +50 to +70. So you have Outlaw, even if your reload is only like +30, or your reload stat is 30, now this thing can take that thing all the way up to 100 with Outlaw. So Outlaw, gonna feel more worthwhile. It's good. Nothing wrong with that. Merciless. I haven't used this thing in, I think, 2 years, possibly. Increase the inventory stat from 36 to 55. So this will increase the reserve ammo. Off the top of my head, I honestly could not tell you what Merciless's reserve ammo is, mostly because I have not used it in so long. That being said, I don't know if fusion rifles really still have a great place. Maybe if this thing gives it like 30 rounds, maybe. I don't know. We'll just have to see. Either way, more ammo and Merciless. Woohoo. Not really excited. Mountaintop. We all knew this was coming. Everybody was asking for it. Mountaintop had a lot of issues. One-shot body shot with infinite range. Quick and easy cleanup of wounded guardians. Deals high splash damage, rewarding players for inaccuracy, like literally being not accurate. Perfect in-air accuracy allows airborne guardians to rain down death, and there's not much guardian can do to respond. Valid on all accounts. So they did listen. So the changes, I don't know if these are going to be enough, but there are some changes. Reduce the splash damage by 33%, so the splash isn't going to be quite as lethal. That being said, you can still get splash damage on somebody and usually still be able to clean them up, most likely. Increase the impact damage such that the total damage is 5% lower than before. So direct hits are still powerful. Reduce splash damage by 33%. You're still probably going to be able to clean people up, but it is a lot less. So if somebody's like pumping shots into you and they still have to land and aim, you might have a better chance. We'll just have to see. They reduced the velocity multiplier for micro missile because that thing does just travel insanely fast. Still probably going to travel in a straight line. It's just slower from 1.4 to 1.2. Now it's 20% faster than other breach load grenade launchers. Reduced in-air accuracy. Now a significant projectile error while in air. So combining the in-air accuracy reduction with the reduced splash damage, like jump in the air and shooting at the ground near somebody is likely to be less effective. Overall, typically pretty good. We'll see if you can still do Mountaintop, especially if you're running like grenade launcher scavenger and you've got 22 Mountaintops that you're just constantly firing, clean them up with a hand cannon shot or a submachine gun. Still probably going to be there, but Mountaintop also is not going to be Trials, Iron Banner. It's not going to be in the new raids. It's not going to be high-level stuff anymore. So it is being sunset, so it's only going to be usable in basic things. Falling Guillotine, I'm sorry. Reduced heavy attack damage by 24% to bring in line with other swords. Note, Falling Guillotine will continue to be slightly above average, just not to the extent that it is now. Falling Guillotine is an absolute beast. Like, it is a monster. You spin to win on a boss or whatever it is. It's not going to be quite as crazy. Swords still feel good, which I'm glad they didn't completely knock those down. Falling Guillotine specifically is probably extra powerful. So now you can probably pick between your different swords. The spin is still probably going to give you an edge in damage. But if you don't have like your perfect Falling Guillotine, you're not like completely missing out now if you have the Relentless Whirlwind of another sword. You're still probably going to be pretty close in damage, which I guess gives more option to swords, but really doesn't set them apart, which is kind of sad. What are you going to do? I don't know if I love this one. I'm not surprised, I guess, on this one generally. Maybe, yeah, it's like we do have a new exotic coming. It's going to be the Chainsaw Sword. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. So maybe they just didn't want this thing outshining the exotic. GMD in my chat right now is saying that. So that could be a reason they didn't want it making the other brand new sword look so questionable. We'll have to see. Either way, a lot of people's Falling Guillotines are not going to be quite as potent. Still going to be a usable sword, so don't delete it. Still a good legendary sword and probably one of the best. It's just not like God tier S+++ tier. That's all. Mida Multi-Tool, Mida Mini-Tool, they said they moved the Mida Synergy trait to the intrinsic. Basically, they gave whatever the Mida Synergy perk is to like just to permanently be on the weapon. They're going to give it hipfire grip and kill clip. So they're moving some stuff around there. Same thing with Sturm and Drang. Drang is the secondary weapon to Sturm. Same way Mida Mini-Tool is to Mida Multi-Tool. They're kind of the cleanup weapons for the other side. Drang is going to get this Together Forever perk moved into just like the permanent spot. It's also going to add accurate rounds and moving target. Overall, these seem fine. Basically, it makes them more of a perk that's, it's a perk that's like permanently on the gun, but also you have like a couple other perks in here as well. Overall, generally good things. So the gunsmith will be selling a version of this weapon November 10th with no infusion cap. That's just going to be one of those things that ties into the Mida Multi-Tool exotic. There's no other way to get it because it was part of the quest, so they're just going to be able to get it from the gunsmith. That's one of the ways. This one is weird. Ruinous Effigy. So the brand new exotic that you shot all the eyeballs for, the new trace rifle. Transmutation fears. Those things that you kill and that you pick up and you can run around and do your defensive thing or dunk on the ground. Reduce the damage of the aerial melee, which I'm not entirely sure what that one is. It may be the dunk, but I'm not sure. By 25%. This thing is not breaking the game in any way, and they just made it worse. This is one of the things that I see a lot of questions as to why is this a thing? And honestly, I don't know. I can't give a good reason why they would nerf Ruinous Effigy. So it's a thing, but I'm not sure why. They also significantly reduced the damage of the drain effect. So when you block and you have the bubble, it was powerful. They made that weaker. I haven't seen this break any encounters yet, and now it's definitely not going to be. So might have to pour one out for Ruinous Effigy. I don't know if it's going to be as fun to use as it is before. If all of the pieces of it feel weaker, I mean, it's a very specific thing. You have to melt a guy, go run over, pick up the sphere, run around. You have to be in close proximity for the little bubble to work. I don't know why this feels like it's going to break things, but apparently they just didn't want it to be as powerful as it was. I never heard anybody say that this thing was like busted in the first place, so it seems odd. Arbalest no longer strikes shields multiple times. I think it had like armor piercing rounds or something where it like hit on the way in and on the way out, but its efficacy against shielded targets has been increased. Not entirely sure how to take that until somebody tests it. We'll have to see. Jade Rabbit, armor piercing rounds swapped to high caliber rounds, which basically fix some exotic perk bugging out. So that's just making the gun work as it should. So that's most of the sandbox changes that we've got. And I can't decide if we're going to break this up into 2 segments of a video. So if there's a cut here, you'll know why. If not, we'll just go forward. So that basically wraps up the sandbox changes. They also talked about adept weapons for trials, but that's like a whole different video that I'm going to want to break out. So that one's going to probably pop up tomorrow morning on my channel. So don't forget, guys, tomorrow night, that's going to be October 23rd. We've got 2 guests joining the Last Word podcast. We're going to do a deep dive on both the story, speculation, spin foil hats, and all of that fun stuff. And then also of the sandbox and trials weapons. So tune in tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, twitch.tv/Ebontis. Episode 125 should be a juicy one. You guys, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and alert bell. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like below, leave a comment, even if it's just to say hello, because hello. Outside of that, I'll see you guys in the Adept Weapons Trials discussion. I'll post that one tomorrow morning. See you then.